welcome back to my channel. Thank you for all your comments on the last video about this new model explanatory framework for autism covered in my previous video. As one of you said quite rightly, it is a rehashing of old science, so it's not technically speaking a completely new model, but it's kind of bringing together previous strands of research and trying to sort of make it into a more coherent framework, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's definitely not new science. It has been talked about before. But yeah, it's just trying to bring it together into a unifying framework. I think that's the main difference. And yeah, you say that it's similar really to go old systematizer, hyper-systematizer model, where you end up with two parents who are systematizers and then having a hyper-systematizing child who ends up being autistic, sort of thing. Another one of you says that you like the way the model seems to bridge the divide between the categorical and the dimensional approaches, keeping autism as a distinct category, but situating it in the broader phenomenon of autistic personality. And you suggest that we need a more user-friendly label for the broader autism phenotype, so that people with these high number of autistic traits but who don't meet the clinical criteria for autism diagnosis have a word that helps them describe their experiences, but ensuring that it's distinct from autism proper. And you also make the point that in obsessive-compulsive disorder, family members of people with a clinical diagnosis of OCD often have more symptoms, but not necessarily enough to meet the threshold for diagnosis. So in OCD as well, it seems that there's this sort of broader phenotype of OCD-like manifestations in family members who aren't necessarily clinically impaired. So might just have a higher, maybe like more fastidiousness than normal, maybe a bit more worrying, a bit more than normal, like needing things to be in a certain order or whatever, but it doesn't clinically impact their life, so they don't need a diagnosis. And yeah, so I think that's correct. It's the same. It's not just in autism. All neurodevelopmental conditions actually do tend to have this subclinical, wider phenotype, because they exist along dimensions, and it's only when at the extreme of a dimension you end up with a categorical diagnosis. And you suggest that maybe we need a new personality term for subclinical OCD temperament, and that this might stop the trivialisation of OCD. So, for example, when someone says, I'm a little bit OCD, often meaning that they're maybe a bit more obsessive, or they identify certain traits in themselves, but they obviously don't have the full-blown OCD, so it can come across as rather trivialising. But then again, if they actually do have a temperament that includes more obsessive behaviour than usual, having this kind of represented scientifically and then given a name for it might actually stop the trivialisation. So yeah, that's possible. And another one of you says that you like the distinction between the autistic personality, which can be beneficial, and autism proper, which is a harmful disability. However, you are unsure they are caused by different things, the way the model suggests. Risk factors pushing you from a personality to diagnosable autism. You think that there might be a quantitative difference in how many risk factors someone has, not a qualitative difference. And I guess, yeah, just more research needs to be done into this, really. I think what the model really makes clear is that the core autism personality is comes from these common genetic variants. And obviously how these common genetic variants interact will affect like how that personality is manifested, and then the variety within autism diagnosis can be accounted for through these additional risk factors. And obviously there are likely to be many different risk factors that can impact this common genetic autism. But then again, we don't know. We still need to find out. You know, the model suggests that the variety found in autism is to do with the impact of additional risk factors and the ability to cognitively compensate, and that then is manifested in the wide variety seen in the autism spectrum. But it's also possible that there is a genuine different types of autism represented at the genetic level as well. So either we have these common genetic variants where autism does actually have at heart a common core, in other words, is a unified condition at its core, and the variety is simply caused by additional factors which can vary from individual to individual. Or maybe the core itself is caused by different factors. So, yeah, we just don't know. Just more research. We're still in the early stages, aren't we? But yeah, it's worth thinking about that as a possibility. So, I did come across another article. I actually came across the full thesis, by the way. I didn't read the whole thing. I kind of scanned it because it's very, very scientific. And, you know, very scientific articles can be quite difficult to read for the layperson, using a lot of language and acronyms and things. And I intended to read the whole thing, but eventually I just ended up scanning it because it was quite difficult to read. But I got the kind of, I think, the general thrust of it. And it's basically the longer version of the article I talked about in my last video, but I just wanted to read the full article, I don't know, just to kind of find out a bit more about it, because it's fleshed out a bit more in the full article. And the full article is to be found Psychiatry, Frontiers in Psychiatry, November 2021, a unifying theory for autism, ? The pathogenetic triad as a theoretical framework, and it's written by Darko Sarovic. Okay, so I'm just going to move over to video number 2, because I think I'll talk about that in the next video. Just keep this one short and sweet, just with your comments in this one. But moving over to video number 2 now, just to just to go into it in a bit more depth, really. So moving over to video number 2 now.